A few days ago, I made a pretty scornful argument on this podcast in which I really chuckled at the crying performances of Adam Schiff, of Kinzinger, the Capitol Hill policeman. I mean, a real boohoo fest by these characters, one on top of the other. I mean, tough job for the Academy Awards Committee to decide which is the most outstanding thespianism here. And the points I wanted to make in that segment were two. One, the simple fact that these guys, the Capitol Police testifying, were putting forward a procession of lies, most notably, there was a mob of people and they were screaming the N-word at me and they were calling my mom or my wife a whore. Now, where's the video of that? Remember, these Capitol Police guys wear body cam, and even in case they didn't, the whole area of the Capitol is under surveillance. So if it happened, it would be on the video. But the video has never been released for the obvious reason that it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist for the obvious reason that this never happened. So this was a manufactured narrative. And I treated it, some people may say, well, Dinesh, you were unduly harsh. Well, no, I was duly harsh. But it's provoked a very interesting reaction, which is to say one of these NeverTrump groups, it's called Accountable GOP, released a video in which they intercut my chuckles and laughter with a replay of the most sort of tear-jerking testimony, as if this kind of contrast would expose me to be deeply insensitive. In fact, Adam Kinzinger retweeted this, pushed it out, just watch, he says. And then this was accompanied by an article. This was by a guy named Charlie Sykes, a NeverTrumper, whom I've actually known from the old days. This is a kind of obscure radio host from the Midwest. Right around the time I wrote my book, Illiberal Education, he published a book that sunk like a stone. It was called Profscam. Okay, he kept calling me every week, please say something about my book in the media and so on. And I was like, your book is stupid. I didn't say that to him, but I was thinking to myself. So I kind of ignored him a little bit because his book was, written at the 9th grade level. The point is not that the professors are running a scam. It's the ideological contamination of the academy, particularly of the selective schools. But Charlie Sykes never went to one, so what would he know? In any event, the guy's nursed a grudge over the years. Now he's sort of one of these vicious never-Trumpers, and his point is that I'm being very cruel. And he says he wants he wants Congress to say to me, as they said to McCarthy, famously, quote, "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" So this cliche from the 1950s is trotted out by this undereducated columnist. And then when I said, in fact, Sykes goes, I want this to be a career-ending event. So he wants to override my 20 books, my movies, my long career, my White House credentials, and so on. None of which he has, of course. He wants to override that because, I laughed at the Capitol Police. And then when I said, hey, who's this guy Sykes? Pretty much, Tom Arnold. Now, when I saw this from Tom Arnold, I'm like, who's Tom Arnold? That name sort of vaguely rings a bell. Now, isn't he the unfunny guy who was married to the funny woman, Roseanne Barr, for 4 years in the 1990s? So this complete has-been. I'm now going to quote him. He goes, better keep bulking up, clown. Got a problem with Charlie Sykes? You got a problem with me. Apparently, he's sort of threatening me. He wants to get in the pit with me. He wants to have a kind of a wrestling fest, I guess, or something to that effect. And another guy on social media lashing out at me goes, yeah, Dinesh, why don't you laugh in front of the faces of these 4 policemen? See what happens then. And I'm like, what? What's going to happen? Are you basically telling me that if I laugh in their faces, they'll go berserk and choke me to death like George Floyd? Is that the idea? Now, the point I'm trying to make with all this here is that there's a massive double standard involved that is being camouflaged here. Remember when Antifa and BLM stormed the nation's capital? Remember when they burned St. John's Church? Remember when they laid violent siege to the White House? Trump actually had to be evacuated and moved to a bunker. How did the media describe it? A mostly peaceful protest. Not an insurrection, not a seditious attempt, not a try to overthrow the government, a mostly peaceful protest. Well, by that standard, January 6th was a mostly peaceful protest. So I think what's going on here is you've got all these guys trying to score minor points. Hey, Dinesh, how dare you question the police? Weren't you tweeting out back the blue earlier on? Well, I support the police. But on the other hand, I also know some lying characters when I see them on TV. I just measure up what they're saying. Oh, Sicknick was killed in the riot. No, he wasn't. He died of natural causes. That's a lie. So I don't have to believe that every policeman is telling the truth on every occasion. And the real point I want to make and perhaps leave you with in this segment is this. We're hearing all this whining from the Capitol Police. These are trained guys. Oh, this guy pushed me. Oh, that guy poked me in the chest. Oh, I was left with some emotional scars. I'll never forget that day. So measure that kind of suffering on the one hand with the treatment of the January 6th protesters. A guy, for example, who committed no violence, didn't even take anything, went into the Capitol, then left, is sitting in solitary confinement for months, is being charged with multiple felonies. The government wants to put him in prison for what, 1 year, 2, 3 years, destroy his family, bankrupt him. These are the people who are really suffering. These are the real casualties. These are the people whose lives are being destroyed to advance the left's bogus narrative. So if you want to know why I'm being harsh and contemptuous toward these lying characters on the public stage, it's ultimately because of the harm that they're doing to the lives of real people.